Welcome back everybody to a new video. I hope you're ready for this one because I'm about to take you on a ride. I'm about to attempt the impossible, which is I will be talking about intercultural dating, and by definition I'll be basically judging and sharing my beliefs on a culture that is not mine as a white straight man. I've been wanting to make this video, but then a part of me is like, maybe I shouldn't. But today is the day. I'm doing it. And I'm gonna try to be as nuanced as I possibly can. Alright? So a few disclaimers are in order before I start this video. Disclaimer number one. I will be using stereotypes. I am of the belief that a lot of stereotypes are actually true, regardless of race, sex, culture. I do not subscribe to the belief that stereotypes are just not correct by design because they're a stereotype. I think a lot of stereotypes are rooted in actual truth. Now, does that mean that every stereotype is correct? Obviously not. Okay? And does that mean that every person from said culture falls under that stereotype? Also absolutely not. So I just want to make that clear. The statements I'm about to make are the findings of me living in Mexico City for about 1 year and 8 months, and are based on a pretty large sample size, my analysis, and my dealings and my personal interactions with a bunch of different people. Okay? So I gladly challenge and welcome any of you to weigh in the comments or give me your opinion. Alright? And so once more, the things I'm saying, I'm very well aware that they do not apply to everybody. But that being said, they do apply to a bunch of people, if not most. So here we go. The non-politically correct, harsh truth about intercultural dating and what I have learned. So I'm gonna start off by saying that when I moved to Mexico City, I already spoke pretty good Spanish. Like, I would say decent Spanish. Nowhere near native level, nowhere near a level where I could pick up on everything. And because of that, I was able to make conversation easily, but I feel like a lot of things would get lost in translation. And I often found things to be odd and peculiar, and I could never figure out why. So I always just kind of assumed it's because I didn't really get it. It's because of the language barrier. So what happened is, as you guys may or may not know, I was in a committed relationship with a Mexican woman for, I want to say, a good 5 months. And she did not and does not speak English, right? So all of our communication would be in Spanish. Though very challenging at first, this did cause me to make a huge leap in terms of my Spanish speaking ability, alright? So I found it quite annoying in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm a big talker, I'm a big thinker, and I like to precisely convey my thoughts. It's very important for me to get my point across, and I think there's a lot of small nuances in language and in expressing emotions. But due to the fact that I was madly in love with this woman, I basically saw no other option than to just step up my game, up my Spanish. And so I did. I got pretty damn good at speaking Spanish. I say that with all attempted humility, but I mean, honestly, at this point, I speak pretty good Spanish. And it's so interesting because the main thing that I learned since reaching that new level is that all those times I used to subscribe these moments of confusion and these disconnections and all these times where I couldn't figure out. God damn. Mexico City for you, man. That's the loudest city in the world by far. Alright, let's try this again. So I think I said subscribe. I think the correct way to say it is ascribe. I'm not even sure, but I feel like you guys know what I'm trying to say. So like, basically I thought that due to my level of Spanish, I often wouldn't get things. I often wouldn't understand things, right? It just wouldn't make sense to me. It would be devoid of any logic, in my opinion. Again, from my Belgian perspective. And so now what I found, now that I understand everything, and now that I'm able to explain and express more or less everything in good Spanish, I've realized that even though all of these people that I encounter, even though they wear the same clothes I do, they wear the same type of sneakers, they have the same type of smartphones, they listen to the same type of music, we have similar haircuts, we watch similar shows, we have similar interests. And even though I can shake their hand and give them a hug, and I can feel flesh gripping mine, and so can they, and I have this general assumption that we are more or less alike, and I hope you're getting the reference. The bottom line is that the way people here think, the way people here look at life and go about their business and what they deem to be normal and logical could not be any further from my logic and my way of thinking. And I like to say, and I mean this in a very non-disrespectful way, so please don't take it any different than, just a funny way of expressing my perspective in a hyperbolic manner. In a lot of ways, Mexican people, to me, as I try not to get ran over, are Martians. They are actual Martians in the sense that they are so incredibly different from me in how they look at life and how they, go about things and all these things. And I never really realized that until recently, and I think it's a super interesting thing to talk about. So, again, few disclaimers. When I say they're Martians, when I say they're different, there's no right or wrong. People I'm always gonna think the Belgian way is the best way. Guess what? If I was Mexican, I would think the Mexican way is the best way. I am just smart enough to realize and understand that my perspective is very subjective and very much colored by, the country and the culture in which I was brought up. So do not mistake this video as a video of me basically condemning Mexican culture or way of thinking. That is not my point. My point is, it does not matter how good you become at speaking the language. It does not matter how much time you spend here, because I've talked to a bunch of foreigners that have moved here and that are engaged in marriage, in long-term relationships with Mexican people, and they all tell me the same, you're always an outsider culturally because you just don't have that, you were not brought up in that type of mindset, in that way of thinking. And I feel like that is something extremely important to point out to people that might potentially be interested in having an intercultural relationship. It is not the promised land, guys, which doesn't mean it's bad or it's worse, or I don't want to discourage you, but it is not the promised land in the sense of like, oh, let me just, go somewhere else and date someone from there and it'll be easy. Like, for example, I know there's a lot of men in Europe right now, and even in the States, that love to talk about how Western women have become too masculine in their energy, they're maybe too ambitious for their liking, they have gone away from the traditional role pattern and expectation of a woman. So they think, let me just go to a more conservative, classic, old school country like Mexico. This is definitely all of those things I just said. And let me, get more of like an old school type of good woman. Yeah, guys, it's not gonna go down like that. Yes, they are more old school in a lot of ways, but it comes with a lot of stuff that you might want to know about. So I'll give you guys a few. For example, and this is going to be a slippery one, and people are going to get angry at me. And it doesn't apply to everybody, but it does apply to a lot of people. The thing about this culture is, for example, a lot of men cheat here. A lot of men cheat here. A lot. And a direct result of that is that when you meet women, Mexican women from here, most of them, if not all, will tell you about their experiences with men, more specifically in terms of them being cheated on. So you're dealing with a large number of women that have experienced and are experiencing ongoing trauma in terms of infidelity and loss of trust and being cheated on. And because of that, and who can blame them, because they have a large sample size and they hear about that a lot from their peers as well, they begin to believe, as any sane human being would, they begin to believe that most men in general cheat. So that's something you should be aware of, okay? That is something that you're gonna have to try and overcome, but plot twist, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to tell somebody who has only known one thing for their whole life that you're the exception to the rule. So keep that in mind. That's the real thing. Now another thing is, like, a lot of women here, for example, they like to talk about equality and machismo. So obviously in this country there is still a lot of inequality based on gender, right? So women have it really, really hard in Mexico. They do. That's not like, I'm not trying to be funny. They do. Men here still have a lot of privileges and just like advantages, and they just have a stronger position in society than women do here. So a lot of women here are trying to turn the tide and are trying to speak out against that, and make a positive change, which I absolutely support and respect. Now the issue is, you can't really have equality, in my opinion, without giving up certain things. Like, equality means equality. Like, you have to go all in or it doesn't really work. Now the thing about that is, you'll find that women here, again, not all, but a lot of them, they like to be taken care of. They like to, for a lack of a better term, kind of assume a princessy role, where they're like, like a princess, and they're expecting men to kind of take care of them and look out for them. And this, I'm not just speaking about like money or finances, even though I am, that's a part of it. Like, men here are very much expected to pay for most of the things that you'll be doing. Again, not all. For example, I just want to make that clear. My ex, she did not expect that, okay? So, I'm not talking about her. This is not a video of me being spiteful. She was definitely an exception to the norm. But a lot of Mexican women will expect that. And that's all they know. And what I have found, and this is my little analysis, this is my little theory, because I also talk to a lot of Mexican men, is that so women expect to be taken care of in multiple ways. Local men here happily oblige, but then because they do that, a lot of these men feel like they have the right to kind of step out on the side and have their little pleasure on the side in the form of cheating. There's this mentality of like, I'm doing my part, I'm being responsible, I'm taking care of my relationship, my family. So then if I've done all of my chores, at the end of the day I get to have a little bit of fun. And so we basically end up with this vicious circle that is fueled by a desire to be taken care of, to be treated a certain way, but then that reinforces men's belief that they are somehow superior and they somehow do not have to respect the boundaries of their relationship, which is obviously very messed up. That's something I do not respect or agree with. So it's just interesting to me. Like I meet a lot of women, they talk about this stuff, they talk about equality, but then when push comes to shove, there is very often, again, not always, a certain expectation there in terms of what is expected of the men. And there is no such thing as like, you might think that you can solve your issues or you can find the right person by just moving to another geographical location, and that'll make it all right because they still have a certain conservative culture. But it comes with things that you're also not gonna like, guys. So just like, let that be clear, and think about that before you make a drastic decision. Okay, this country is still very much in the process of evolving and catching up to a certain zeitgeist, to a certain modern way of living, and they still have some ways to go. And though it may seem perfect and amazing at the surface in the beginning, you'll find that there's many pitfalls that you will have to deal with. Okay, so those are the few things that I have learned talking to people living here and just being very brutally honest. And the main thing, what I said in the beginning of the video, is that you're never gonna be one of them. It's just not gonna happen. And especially if you're like European like me, you're coming here, there's so many discrepancies in our logic and their logic and the way we think. You better be ready to adapt, and you better be ready to change a lot of things about the way you think if you want to have a successful life here. And it's not gonna come easy, okay? Because you'll find yourself in situations where you cannot see the logic, you cannot see the reasoning behind a certain perspective or opinion. or tradition or assumption. And you can talk how you want. At the end of the day, you just have to accept that you are a space traveler on Mars. And if you want to live on Mars, you better learn how to respect the way people on Mars live, and you better learn to adapt, because they are not gonna adapt to you, nor should they. So that's it. I hope I didn't offend anyone with this video. And again, I challenge anybody to tell me that I'm wrong and that I have a very skewed perspective when I say that cheating in this culture is very prevalent. I've met Mexican men that have told me that. They have told me like, what are you talking about? I don't know anybody in my circle that has ever cheated. And it's like, okay, wow, that's kind of crazy. Like, that could not be further from my reality and the people that I meet and what I see on a daily and weekly basis. So if you're one of them, I'm open to listening to your arguments and listening to your perspective. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Comment below. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back with more non-politically correct content real soon. Peace out.